those nursery places and additional free childcare because of, correct me if I'm wrong, a technical glitch on the official website.
Yeah, because today is the deadline for applying for it. In addition to that, some children, some childcare providers are saying, actually, even if you do manage to get onto this website and register, there actually isn't enough funding out there from central government to give you, the parents, the service that you're expecting, all these free extra hours, and actually that nursery places will be very limited because of it.
OK.
So it's quite a complicated picture.
It
Katie
is, but
Rickett...
don't you try and explain it. Katie Rickett...
I'm not going
she
to,
will,
no.
She will. Katie, you're at a nursery there. That is in Bolton. And you've got some families who are going to be affected by all of this. So try and tell us more.
Well, Eamon, it's quite relevant, actually, that these guys have been learning how to look after little newborn chicks, because when the government announced this scheme, it seemed the perfect way for working parents to get the best care for their children while they go out and provide. However, as you say, it's not all going to plan. Now, we've got Dad Mo here and Mum Amy. Now, Mo, first of all, you've had a real issue getting on the system to even get this childcare, haven't you?
Yeah, it took us a number of attempts over a few years. But luckily, eventually, we managed to do it. But as you say, we're both working parents. We want to provide our best for our children, but it is a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare.
And Amy, you actually managed to get on the system quite easily, but your concerns are about the level of childcare Huey will get. I mean, he has all bells and whistles now, doesn't he? Yeah. But what's your concerns?
The concern is that obviously as a working parent you get the benefit, but ultimately in being in full-time education here at the nursery, that actually it may diminish now the actual quality of the care that he's going to sort of receive based on the fact of the cuts that they're going to have. So that's my fundamental issue with the extra hours that we're going to get.
OK, well, I'm going to give Ruby to Mo to look after while we come out and speak to Julie, who is the owner of this nursery. Now, Julie, you're actually going to be charging parents £8 a day, and you say that's the only way that this place can survive. Is this about profit margins, or are you genuinely concerned about the nursery's future?
We're genuinely concerned, Katie, and you know, we hear that all the time. It's all about profits. It really isn't. Nurseries across the country are in the same position that I'm in, as well as childminders being expected to work for less than minimum wage. We want the government to recognise that we're in crisis. The sector is in crisis, and we need help. We need it to be funded properly.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much, Julie. She says they need help. The government says it's investing £1 billion, but it doesn't seem to be enough, certainly for here.
Yes, Katie. Well, here's the chief executive of what's termed the Preschool Learning Alliance, and he's Neil Leitch. And Neil, you guys, I mean, you represent all the nurseries and the service that they're trying to provide. Do you feel, to use a term, you were sold a pup on this, that you were deluded, you were deceived?
Well, we certainly were misled. I mean, government made this announcement almost on the hoof, and they promised parents just before the election that they would get these additional hours. But of course, what they hadn't done is they hadn't calculated how much this would really cost, what the effect on the sector would be, whether we'd be able to deliver it. So parents are expecting one thing, but the likelihood is they'll get something completely different.
And if you put the word free in anything, everyone claps and whoops and thinks this is great, except, as we've just been hearing from there, it's not free.
There is no such thing as free childcare.
There's no such thing as free.
No such thing as free childcare.
But so we've got the government minister for early years provision on the programme. I think in about an hour's time, actually. I'm sure that one of the things he will say is, well, actually, we're providing this £1 billion. It's a lot of money, and we're giving it to councils, and it's up to the councils to then spread it between the nurseries how they see fit. So why are the councils not able to give you, what is it, £4 something, 84 or something an hour, which I think most nurseries expect to pay, you know, to be able to provide good childcare, but they're not getting that. They're getting £3.60, or they're getting a lot less than that. Well, so why aren't the councils able to provide what it is that the government says they are giving?
Let's go back to the £1 billion, OK? It's interesting. Yes, government argues that they've put in an additional £1 billion. But 5 months before this promise was made to the public, it was interesting that Labour were offering an extra 10 hours, not 15, 10 hours. At that point in time, the minister said to the House of Lords Affordable Childcare Committee, it's not enough money. Do you know how much this would cost? He said, this would cost at least £1.5 billion. His words, his rhetoric.
25 hours, not 30.
For 25 hours, not 30. So if you add another 5 hours on top of that, my calculation says that comes to £2.25 billion. So by their own admission, They're putting in less
Well,
than
Neil,
half
let
that's
me,
needed.
as Ranveer was saying, we've got this minister on in just over half an hour's time. You won't be here, he will be. Do you see that camera there with a big number 2 on it? Look down that, look down number 2 and just say what you would like to say to that minister.
Well, I would like the minister to make sure that he adequately funds it. It's a farce at this particular point in time. It's a recipe for disaster. And unless we get adequate funding, this is going to fall over and parents will not get the deal that government offered, frankly.
So he comes back and he says, I am adequately funding it. You're going to say what?
But there's no evidence whatsoever that that's the case.
Well, their own minister, Sam Gimia, who was the early years minister before that, said it would cost...
Said it costs for 10 hours, it costs
£500 million more than they're giving already.
Exactly. So their own admission is there's not enough money.
Are your members telling you that actually, that with business rates, you know, because nurseries still have to pay those, and with, you know, having to pay minimum wage to various staff members, all of those extra costs, and now this not necessarily being free, that some of them can't actually carry on their businesses? Are some nurseries going to fold because of this?
They're already folding. I mean, almost on a daily basis, we're seeing nurseries go by the wayside. Outstanding nurseries, registered by Ofsted as outstanding, closing. In the last few years alone, we've seen 10,000 childminders come out of the sector. That doesn't tell me that this is a buoyant, vibrant sector. A fifth of childminders have gone by the wayside.
Neil, let me just finish with something very controversial. You shouldn't have children unless you can afford them. There may be those out there who would say that, and they would say, look, you brought them into the world, you look after them, you cost them, you pay for them yourself. It's not up to everybody else to pay for them.
Well, it's an interesting debate. We never seem to have that argument when we talk about school children. And yet, in fact, we will sow the best seeds at an early point. So I would argue, if you're going to invest, it's in the early years that you should invest, not later on in life.
So the thing is, we're not seeing nursery stage as proper school, and we should.
It's care and education. We use the word childcare, but it's care and education, and it maps the future for all of these children.
So the danger is it's being seen more as babysitting or baby minding, maybe, than care and education.
Well, government might view it that way. Providers don't, Eamon, I would say that.
Friend. Thank you very much indeed. Neil, very good to get your take on things. Thank you. Thing is today. Now, that comes amidst criticism from some childcare providers that the scheme isn't adequately funded by the government, and the website that the government has put up is rubbish, basically.
Yeah, we spoke to a parent earlier, Mo, who said it has been an absolute nightmare. He'd been trying for weeks to get on it. Let's speak to Robert Goodwill, who is indeed the Minister for Children and Families and joins us now from York. A very good morning to you, Minister.
Morning.
It does baffle almost everybody, parents, childcare providers, us, that something would be titled free when frankly it's not, because many nurseries are saying it's going to cost them money to provide these so-called free hours. Why are you misleading everybody?
Well, the reason I'm in York today is that this is one of the areas that we piloted this a year ago, and despite some initial reservations from some of the nurseries, 100% of the providers here are delivering 30 hours, and we've had 15,000 children already benefiting from 30 hours. This is the deadline for September starters, and there'll be another deadline in January for those who turn 3 in the new year.
But in the independent evaluation of that pilot scheme you're talking about, one provider running a nursery in York said this: what the government isn't telling you is virtually every nursery has been charging for additional services to make ends meet, which we never did before. The vast majority can't do it without with the funding that they're getting. So the unspoken truth is that they're charging at an inflated rate for additional services, i.e. nappies, food, trips, the sort of things that usually come with what you pay for childcare. So essentially, even the people you're talking about are saying you're not telling the truth.
Well, a survey that's coming out today, an independent survey, indicates that 80% of the nurseries that are providing the 15 hours already are prepared to provide the 30 hours. And of course, it is possible to charge for additional hours for things like nappies, trips, music lessons and lunch, but that shouldn't be a prerequisite to the additional 15 hours that are provided under this scheme. As I say, we've been piloting this for a year. It's gone very well indeed, up and down the country, places like Northumberland, York, all over the country. And indeed, 200,000 parents have registered online and will be accessing childcare in September.
So you reckon 20%, 1 in 5 of providers not providing the service is good? That's a result, do you?
Well, they're saying that they aren't necessarily going to do that. The experience here in York is that all the providers did provide. In Northumberland, a different area, all the providers there provided. And we've done extensive work looking at the actual costs of delivering childcare. We put additional money in. This is funded with £1 billion by 2020.
Yeah, but it's still not enough. There's no point saying it's £1 billion when they need £1.5 billion, is there? So, I mean, it means, Minister, you are either deluded or deceptive over this.
No, we've done extensive work looking at the actual cost of delivering childcare. And indeed, in this nursery here, which are delivering additional places in response to this, their cost at the moment is less than what we're charging them. So they are very keen to get engaged.
Minister.
We have nurseries up and down the country extending their places. If I can give you one example, I mean, the Busy Bees nursery group that have 267 nurseries up and down the country, the cooperative childcare group, they are keen to deliver for the prices that we're given.
But
so there may be a few nurseries for specific reasons.
Why is it that just a couple of years ago that Sam Gimmer, the early years minister then, a Tory, a Conservative, said this in evidence to the House of Lords? The increased cost of this is quite enormous, going from something like 15 hours to 25 hours, not the 30 that you're saying, would cost an extra £1.5 billion at least. That comes from your own party in evidence. He's saying it costs £500 million extra. You're now saying you can provide more hours on less money. It simply does not calculate.
Well, we've piloted it in 12 areas up and down the country, including York, and it has worked here. The funding that we put in has delivered the places. We've had 15,000 children already being delivered 30 hours, and we're confident that we can deliver it up and down the country. Lots of nurses are extending. I was in a nursery in East Yorkshire recently. They're extending to provide more places. So it's up to the industry to step up to the mark. We also have 5,500 dormant childminders. People can use this to access childcare through childminders.
But there are 10,000 childminders who've come out of the business. I mean, but it's many businesses, and we had the Neil Leitch on earlier. In fact, we've got a clip of him, and this is what he wanted to say to you.
It's a farce at this particular point in time. It's a recipe for disaster, and unless we get adequate funding, this is going to fall over, and parents will not get the deal that government offered.
So can he go whistle for it? Is he going to get adequate funding?
Well, we believe the funding is adequate, and as I say, we have piloted it. We put additional money in, additional £300 million to respond to those who were concerned about the levels of funding. And as I say, nurseries like this are already delivering at the levels of funding that we're providing. The pilot areas up and down the country are successfully delivering. We have 200,000 parents who have already registered. Many of them have already secured places, and others will. So we're confident this scheme will be delivered. And indeed, while there are a few nurseries who may feel that they can't deliver at the prices we're given, the vast majority of the industry, including the big chains, are up for it, and they're going to be delivering for those parents. It's worth £5,000 per child. This is a great fillip for working families to enable them to take on more hours, for people not in work to go into work.
That is your story, and thank you for telling it. There are many people who are saying that that is not their very experience of it, but thank you very much for putting your points forward this morning.
Robert Goodwill, a minister perfectly named, because he's looking for a lot of goodwill, isn't he, from parents?
Yes.
And from those
Will he
nursery
find it?
providers.
Can he go whistle for that, do you think?
Well, you know, he's saying that they're asking them to do the same job for less, or more for less, whatever, and 80% of those nurseries are stepping up to the mark for that. Anyway,